That is Australia's joy.
What a victory for the Sri Lankans.
Australia are World Cup champions. India lift the World Cup. And Australia are champions of the world.
Those of recent generations think of Sri Lanka as one of the most skillful, entertaining sides in world cricket. But it wasn't always that way for this island paradise nation. Indeed, Sri Lanka cricket was only established as a formal body in 1975, shortly before the first ever Cricket World Cup. They would lose all their matches, and their presence was remembered for the protests that took place, demonstrations against the Sri Lankan Civil War. In 1979 they took a step forward, winning the ICC trophy just 3 days before the World Cup, and then managing a landmark victory against India, although still progress from the group stage would evade them. 1983 saw them finish bottom of a tough group, but they were far more competitive, particularly with the bat, and a victory over New Zealand showed further progress. The 1987 Cricket World Cup took place in India and Pakistan, offering favourable conditions for a Sri Lanka side looking to improve on modest showings to date. Sadly, it wasn't to be, as they lost all their games, despite some attractive stroke play once again. Here was a side with undoubted ability, but lacking the discipline and ruthless edge to influence World Cups.
Without a doubt, this was a developing team by the '92 World Cup, and actually they were in beating Zimbabwe in New Plymouth. They actually became the first team to score in excess of 300 in the second innings of an ODI.
After that Zimbabwe game, there was another victory against a strong South African side. The player of the match, the enigmatic Arjuna Ranatunga, a player unlike any other, and certainly breaking the mould when it came to cricketers from Sri Lanka.
Driving, lovely shot through the covers.
Forthright, gutsy, and with a fervent desire to win, he would be the man to change the course of history for Sri Lanka cricket.
He's going away. That's the one for Sri Lanka. Ramanathan comes back for the second run. And in fact, that goes over the boundary. And on the second last ball of the day, Sri Lanka have won it. And boy, they have.
You could certainly see the seed of something germinating there. Very strong in the batting. Still the bowling was evolving, but they managed to actually take a couple of decent victims in that World Cup in '92, and you could see that the threat was going to develop. The '96 Sri Lankans were an absolutely stunning team almost from the off, and I think it was the opening pair that was the key to it, Sanath Jayasuriya and Kaluwitharana. Jayasuriya, astonishing batsman, amazing eye. I remember that shot he used to play to a ball on about middle and leg. Just used to pick it up over deep square leg, nonchalantly hit it into the crowd for 6 in the first couple of overs of an inning. People hadn't really seen that before. The white ball seemed to just soar off his bat into the distance.
Oh, he's got that away. That'll be 6 over the top. Don't pitch that one.
Took everyone by surprise actually in '96. I mean, it was against a backdrop of the teams not wanting to go and play in Sri Lanka, so they actually got through the initial stages of the tournament without having to play matches against Australia and West Indies. And so actually they quietly qualified. They did beat India in that group stage, and there's a bit of a momentum developing really.
Sri Lanka had never got Sri Lanka had never got to the knockout stage of a World Cup before. Now they faced England in Faisalabad, needing 236 for a place in the final four.
They changed the face of one-day cricket with their approach, didn't they? I think that's what blindsided a lot of the teams who would have fancied their chances against them, England included. Kalawatarana and Jayasuriya charged out the gate with regularity, scoring above a run of ball. 7 and 8 and over was unheard of really in those times. So they really were setting new benchmarks in one-day international cricket during that tournament.
That's a good shot. Right to the gap. And that is the 236 that Sri Lanka was seeking. And what a comprehensive victory. Terrific win for them.
Beating England led to a semi-final against neighbours India in front of an extraordinary crowd of 100,000 at Eden Gardens in Kolkata. For Sri Lanka, this was a moment they'd only dreamt of, and Aravinda de Silva helped them put on a decent total of 251. But with the Indians struggling, Tendulkar back in the pavilion, and with 8 wickets down, rioting crowds would signal the end of the match, with referee Clive Lloyd taking the brave decision to award the game to Sri Lanka. Without question, it was the biggest result in Sri Lankan cricket history up to that point, and a World Cup final awaited.
It was a huge blow for the '96 World Cup when that semi-final had to be called off, but really match referee Clive Lloyd had no option. The scenes in Kolkata were pretty shocking. There were fires in the stands, there were bottles being thrown onto the field, and there was no other way around it. But for India, the scenes were summed up by Vinod Kambli, the not-out batsman, walking off as the fans rioted in the stands in floods of tears. But really, match referee Clive Lloyd had no option.
And so to the final against Australia at the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. But this time the fireworks from Sri Lanka's trusted openers didn't materialise, and it was left to De Silva once again and his captain Arjuna Ranatunga to recover the innings.
He's blasted that through the offside field. That's a beautiful shot. Very little room to move in. Onto the back foot, and he's hit it straight into the gap before the square of the wicket. Oh, and he's hit that one through the field as well. That's a magnificent shot by Aravinda again. He's playing a little blind ribbon innings. Oh, beautifully played. That's a great century. A great century made when the chips were down by a fantastic batsman.
Australia mightn't accept it, but Arjuna Ranatunga had planned that World Cup campaign, and Arjuna knew what he was doing. He knew how to get under the skin of the Australians. He knew how to pick up on the weak points they had in their side. And he really rubbed it home, I think, with his own batting at the end there, giving nothing away, knocking around singles, getting to victory with Aravinda, the two of them, if you like, the talisman of that side, being there at the end. He never gave Australia a sniff.
That's it, all the way to the boundary for 4. What a victory for the Sri Lankans. A fantastic effort by them. Their players are charging out onto the ground. The Aussies shaking them by the hand.
And what a moment. Sri Lanka won cricket champions.
Was it a disappointment for the Australians? Massive, no doubt about the disappointment level. But was it the right result? Yes, it was. And on the day, given all the circumstances, many of them so topsy-turvy, was it a surprise? Probably not, actually. Sri Lanka were very good, and it needed a very good side to beat them, and on the day, Australia didn't play to that level.
It was a staggering performance for Sri Lanka to win the '96 World Cup. If you bear in mind such a small country, a tiny population, didn't really have a very successful professional infrastructure for cricket, and they came and beat all the big boys and won that final match as well, and they won it with composure as well as outrageous ingenuity.
Before the tournament, Australia had refused to play in Colombo on safety fears. And Ranatunga, after hearing this, declared, "I want to play Australia in the final." And when it happened, whilst most people expected Australia to steamroller this relatively new international team, Ranatunga knew that he had more than one way to win. He knew that he could confound expectation with his openers. He knew he could confound expectation with chasing to win rather than setting a total and suffocating an opponent. He knew he had the middle order, but he knew he had belief. And that belief in the captain bled out into the team. And in the end, it's one of the most famous results in all of cricket history.